Captain Kim Tae-ho pressed his face against the thick glass of the observation deck, watching the stars slowly shift as their massive ship approached its destination. After 200 years of traveling through the cold darkness of space, they were finally here.
Yes.
Kepler 404 to be hung before them like a blue and green jewel, perfect and beautiful. Looked exactly like the pictures Earth had sent them so long ago. "Captain," called Lieutenant Park Min-ho from across the bridge, his voice tight with excitement. "We are close enough to start the landing sequence." Kim nodded and turned to face his crew. These people had been born on this ship just like their parents and grandparents before them. None of them had ever seen a real planet, only the metal walls and artificial lights of their home in space. Today, everything would change. The colony ship New Dawn had been humanity's last hope when it left Earth. The home planet was dying, its resources almost gone, its people struggling to survive. 50,000 of Earth's best and brightest had been chosen to make this journey, to find a new world where humans could live and grow. Kim's own great-grandfather had been one of the original planners, though he had died long before the ship reached its destination. "Begin the descent," Kim ordered. "Take us down slowly. We have waited 2 centuries for this moment." The ship shuddered as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the windows, they could see clouds and oceans and vast green lands that seemed to stretch forever. Some of the younger crew members started to cry. They had dreamed of this day their entire lives. The landing took 3 hours. When the ship finally touched down in a wide valley near a river, everyone aboard felt the strange sensation of real gravity pulling at their bodies. The ship had artificial gravity, but this was different somehow, more natural. "Sir," said Chief Engineer Nam Sora, checking her instruments. "All systems are working perfectly. The air outside is safe to breathe. The water is clean. The soil is rich. This place is exactly what we hoped for." Kim smiled for the first time in months. "And let's go outside and claim our new home." The first week was like a dream. They built temporary shelters near the ship and began exploring their new world. The planet was even better than they had hoped. The weather was mild, the land was fertile, and there were no dangerous animals or diseases. Children who had never seen a real sky ran through grass under an actual sun. But on the 8th day, everything changed. Lieutenant Park Min-ho was working at the sensor station when he noticed something strange. "Captain," he called out, his voice worried, "I'm getting some unusual readings from the edge of the system." Kim came over to look at the display. There were energy signatures out there, faint but definitely artificial. "Could it be another ship? From Earth?" he asked hopefully. "No, sir. These patterns are completely different from our technology." Over the next few hours, the signals grew stronger. Then, without warning, massive shapes began to appear in the sky above them. They were ships, but not like anything humans had ever built. These vessels were huge, dark, and covered in sharp angles and glowing lights. They moved with purpose, surrounding the planet in a perfect formation. The colonists stared up at the sky in shock and fear. They had traveled for 200 years to find a new home, and now they discovered they were not alone. A voice suddenly filled the air around them, speaking in perfect English but with a strange accent. "Humans of Earth," it said, "you have entered the territory of the hegemony. My name is Admiral Corvin, and I command this fleet." Kim grabbed the communication device from his belt. "This is Captain Kim Tae-ho of the Earth colony ship New Dawn. We come in peace. We did not know this world belonged to anyone." The alien voice laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. "Peace. You speak of peace, while you invade our space without permission. But we have been watching you, humans. We know about your dying world and your desperate journey. We have been waiting for you to arrive." Chill ran down Kim's spine. "Waiting for us?" "Yes. You see, we have been observing your species for some time. We watched your ship leave Earth. We watched it travel through space, and we prepared this world for your arrival. Everything you have found here, the perfect conditions, the safe landing site, even the lack of dangerous life forms, it was all arranged by us." The terrible truth began to sink in. They had not discovered a new world. They had walked into a trap. "What do you want from us?" Kim asked. though he already feared the answer. Simple, Admiral Corvin replied. Submit to our authority and serve the hegemony. Your people will work for us, and in return, we will allow you to live. Refuse, and we will destroy every human on this planet. Kim looked around at his people, at the children playing in the grass, at the families who had dreamed of freedom among the stars. They had escaped a dying Earth only to find themselves prisoners on a world that was never meant to be their home. With trembling hands, he activated the long-range transmitter and sent one final message toward Earth, knowing it would take decades to reach home and that Earth might not even exist anymore to receive it. 47 years later, deep inside a mountain in Korea, Director Lee Gin-woo sat in his command chair watching the holographic display that showed Earth's entire solar system. The message from the colony had arrived just 3 hours ago, and now every leader on Earth was gathered in this secret facility. Play it again, Lee ordered quietly. Captain Kim, Taeho's desperate voice filled the room once more. His words painted a picture of humanity's children trapped on a distant world, surrounded by alien ships and forced to serve masters they had never chosen. The message contained detailed information about the hegemony's technology, their tactics, and their weaknesses. Information that the colonists had risked their lives to gather and transmit. Sir, said Commander Cho Haijin, standing at attention. Beside Lee's chair, all fleet commanders are ready for your orders. Lee nodded slowly. The woman before him had been born after the colony ship left Earth, trained from childhood for this exact moment. Tell me, Commander, what do you see when you look at those stars? Cho followed his gaze to the display showing the vast emptiness of space. I see our children waiting for us to bring them home, sir. Good answer. Lee stood and walked to the center of the room. Activate protocol, Lazarus. It's time to show the galaxy what Earth has really been doing. The other leaders in the room exchanged glances. They had all heard whispers about Protocol Lazarus, but few knew the full truth. As Lee spoke, the activation code screens throughout the facility came to life, showing images that would have shocked anyone who believed Earth's official story. The truth was that Earth had lied about everything. When the colony ship left Earth 2 centuries ago, the leaders had told everyone that the planet was dying and humanity was desperate. They had spoken of failing resources and a world on the edge of collapse. But it had all been a carefully planned deception. Earth had never been dying. The resource crisis had been fake, created to justify sending the colony ship away. The colonists traveled through space. Earth had been secretly growing stronger, much stronger. Look at this, Lee said, pointing to images of massive construction sites throughout the solar system. While our children journeyed to the stars, we turned every asteroid, every moon, every planet into a factory. We built shipyards that could construct fleets. We developed weapons that could fight wars. We prepared for the day when someone would threaten our people. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had been completely transformed. What had once been floating rocks was now a vast industrial complex. Thousands of automated factories worked day and night building ships and weapons. The entire operation had been hidden from the rest of the galaxy by advanced stealth technology. The colony ship was never just about finding a new home, Lee continued. It was about learning what was out there, about finding our enemies before they found us. And now we know who they are. Mars had been turned into a military training ground, where millions of soldiers practiced for battles in space. The moon had become a massive weapons testing facility. Even the gas giants had been modified. Their atmospheres harvested to fuel the greatest war machine in human history. Commander Cho stepped forward. Sir, we have over 10,000 ships ready for immediate deployment. Another 50,000 can be ready within 6 months. Our forces are spread throughout the solar system, all hidden and waiting. What about the weapon systems? Lee asked. All operational, sir. The solar defense grid is complete. Every planet, every moon, every major asteroid has been armed. If anyone tries to attack Earth, they'll face firepower they can't imagine. Lee smiled grimly. The hegemony thought they had trapped 50,000 helpless colonists. They had no idea they had just declared war on 8 billion humans who had spent 2 centuries preparing for this fight. There's something else, said Dr. Kang Min-soo, the head of Earth's intelligence service. The colony ship carried hidden quantum communicators. We've been receiving detailed reports from Kepler-44 to be for the past 47 years. We know everything about the hegemony. Their fleet positions, their technology, their weaknesses, even their political problems. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth hadn't just been building weapons. They'd been gathering intelligence, learning about their enemies, preparing for a war on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The colonists think they're trapped, Lee said, but they're not prisoners. There are advanced scouts. They've been sending us everything we need to know about the hegemony. And now it's time to use that information. Commander Cho looked at the display showing Earth's hidden fleets. What are your orders, sir? Lee walked to the window that showed the stars beyond Earth's atmosphere. Somewhere out there, his people were waiting for rescue. Somewhere out there, aliens thought they had defeated humanity before the war had even begun. Launch the fleets, he ordered. All of them. It's time to show the hegemony what happens when you threaten Earth's children. Throughout the solar system, hidden doors opened and ships began to emerge. The largest military force in human history was about to begin its journey to the stars. The hegemony had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that Earth was as weak and desperate as they had pretended to be. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. Commander Yoon Dae-yoon crept through the dark maintenance tunnels beneath the colony settlement, moving as quietly as he could. Above him, the hegemony guards walked their regular patrols, believing they were watching over helpless human slaves. They had no idea that beneath their feet, a secret war had been going on for almost 50 years. He reached the hidden meeting room, where 20 other colonists waited for him. These were the leaders of the resistance, people who had been carefully chosen and trained over the decades. They looked tired and worn, but their eyes burned with determination. Report, Yoon whispered to Chief Engineer Nam Sora. The fusion reactors are still running at 60% efficiency, she said with a small smile. The hegemony engineers can't figure out why, but every day we introduce tiny flaws in their systems. Nothing obvious, nothing that would get us caught, but enough to slow them down. Yoon nodded approvingly. This was how they had been fighting. Back for years. Not with guns or bombs, but with small acts of sabotage that looked like accidents. A computer virus here, a broken part there, a miscalculation in the power grid. Each problem was tiny, but together they added up to serious damage. What about the communication array? Yoon asked Dr. Kim Hae-won, the colony's former science. Officer, still working perfectly, she replied. The hegemony thinks it's just part of our old Earth technology. But we've been sending detailed reports back to Earth for decades. Everything we learn about their ships, their weapons, their weaknesses, it all goes home. The quantum communicators hidden in the original colony ship had been Earth's greatest secret. It could send messages instantly across any distance, but the hegemony had never discovered them. For 47 years, the colonists had been Earth's eyes and ears in enemy territory. We have new information, said Lieutenant Park Min-ho, who had grown old in service to the resistance. I've been working with their computer systems for months. The hegemony is not as strong as they pretend to be. The others leaned forward, eager to hear what he had learned. Their empire is huge, but it's also fragile, Park continued. They rule over dozens of different alien species, and most of them hate the hegemony. They're only loyal because they're afraid. The hegemony keeps them in line through fear and superior technology. What kind of technology? Yoon asked. The interesting part, Park said, pulling out a small device. I managed to copy some of their technical files. Their ships are powerful, but they're also old. They haven't developed anything new in centuries. They just keep using the same designs over and over. Nam Sora examined the device. This is incredible. Their shield generators use a frequency that can be disrupted with the right signal. There. Weapons have a charging time that creates a vulnerability window. Even their navigation systems have weaknesses we could exploit. Yoon felt a surge of hope. How many other species are under hegemony control? At least 30 that I know of, Park replied. And from what I can tell, most of them have been waiting for someone to lead a rebellion. They just need to see that the hegemony can be beaten. Above them, the sound of footsteps made everyone freeze. A hegemony patrol was passing overhead. They waited in silence until the sounds faded away. "There's something else," whispered Dr. Kim Hae-won. "I've been monitoring their communications. The hegemony is planning something big. They're moving fleets around the galaxy, preparing for what they call the final expansion." "What does that mean?" Yoon asked. "They're going to attack Earth," she said grimly. "They've been studying the information they got from our colony ship. They know where humanity comes from, and they want to destroy our homeworld before we can become a threat." The room fell silent. This was the news they had all been dreading. The hegemony wasn't content with just enslaving one human colony. They wanted to wipe out the entire human race. "When?" Yoon asked. "Soon, maybe within the next few years. They're gathering ships from across their empire." Yoon stood up, his mind racing. "Then we need to accelerate our plans." "How many weapons do we have hidden?" "Enough to arm about 5,000 people," replied Namsora. "We've been manufacturing them slowly, using materials we've stolen from hegemony facilities. But we'll need more if we're going to fight back effectively." "What about allies among the other enslaved species?" Yoon asked. "I've made contact with leaders from 6 different species," Park said. "They're all ready to join a rebellion if we can prove it has a chance of success." Yoon looked around the room at these brave men and women who had spent their lives preparing for this moment. They had been patient, careful, and smart. Now it was time to act. "Send the message to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them what we've learned about the hegemony's plans. And tell them that we're ready to do our part when the time comes." As Dr. Kim Hae-won activated the hidden transmitter, Yoon thought about the long game they had been playing. For 50 years, the hegemony had believed they were the masters and humans were the slaves. They had no idea that every day, every hour, every moment of that time had been spent preparing for their downfall. The trap was about to be sprung, but not on humanity. Admiral Corvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the sensor displays with growing confusion. The human fleet from Earth had finally arrived at Kepler-4 for 2B, just as he had expected. 20 large ships hung in space at the edge of the system, their weapons powered down in what looked like a peaceful approach. "Foolish humans," Corvin muttered to his second-in-command. "They think they can negotiate for their colonists. They have no idea how outmatched they are." His fleet consisted of over 200 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything the humans had brought. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, and no single species had ever challenged them successfully. "Sir," called his communications officer, "the human commander is requesting to speak with you." Corvin smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Put her through. Let's hear what pathetic offers they have to make." The image of Commander Cho Haijin appeared on the main screen. She was a small human woman with calm eyes and a steady voice. "Admiral Corvin, I am Commander Cho of the Earth Defense Fleet. I'm here to discuss the release of our people." "There is nothing to discuss," Corvin replied. "Your colonists belong to the hegemony now. They serve us, and they will continue to serve us. You have 2 choices. Leave now, or join them as slaves." Commander Cho nodded slowly. "See, in that case, I have a question for you, Admiral." "How long do you think you've been watching us?" Corvin frowned. "What kind of question is that? We've been monitoring your pathetic species for over 2 centuries. We know everything about your weak little world." "Everything?" Cho asked. "You sure about that?" Something in her tone made Corvin uneasy. "What are you talking about?" "Let me show you something," Cho said. She pressed a button on her console, and suddenly Corvin's tactical display lit up with new contacts. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. "What is this?" Corvin demanded, staring at the screen in disbelief. "These are human ships, Admiral," Cho explained calmly. "They've been in your territory for months. Some of them have been here for years. While you were watching 20 ships approach your little trap, you completely missed the fact that we've surrounded your entire empire." The display showed human vessels appearing throughout hegemony space. They were small, fast ships that had been invisible to hegemony sensors. Some were hiding in asteroid fields, others were disguised as cargo vessels, and still others had been masquerading as ships from other species. "Possible," Corvin whispered. our sensors would have detected them. Your sensors are very good at finding big, obvious threats, Cho agreed. But they're not so good at spotting small, quiet ships that know exactly how to avoid detection. We've been studying your technology for 50 years, Admiral. We know all your weaknesses. On the surface of Kepler 44b, Commander Yoon Daeong was watching the same display from his hidden command center. The moment Earth's fleet had arrived, it activated signal arrays that had been built into the colony's infrastructure over the decades. All teams, this is Commander Yoon, he said into his communicator. Operation Noose is now active. Begin Phase 1. Throughout the colony, hidden weapon systems came online. Buildings that had seemed like simple storage facilities opened to reveal missile launchers. Parks and gardens lifted up to show defensive turrets. Even the children's playground had been built over an underground armory. The hegemony guards on the planet suddenly found themselves facing armed humans, who had been preparing for this moment for half a century. But the colonists weren't trying to escape. They were trying to capture as many hegemony soldiers as possible. We need prisoners, Yoon ordered his teams. These soldiers have information we can use. Back in space, Admiral Corvin was receiving frantic reports from across his empire. Human ships were appearing everywhere, and they weren't just appearing randomly. They were hitting the most important targets in hegemony space. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're getting reports from the Nexus system. Human ships have taken control of the main communication hub. What about the shipyards at Kepler 78? Corvin asked. Also under attack, sir. The humans seem to know exactly where all our important facilities are located. Corvin's hands shook as he realized the truth. They've been planning this for decades. The colony ship, the seemingly desperate message, even our capture of their people. It was all part of a larger plan. Commander Cho's image was still on the screen, and she was still smiling that calm, patient smile. You made one critical mistake. Admiral, you assumed that humans think like you do. You assumed that we would react with fear and desperation when you threatened our people. What do you want? Corvin asked, his voice no longer confident. Just as Cho replied. For 50 years you've held our people as slaves. You've threatened to destroy Earth. You've ruled over dozens of species through fear and violence. That ends today. The tactical display showed more human ships appearing every minute. They had been hidden throughout the galaxy, waiting for this signal. The hegemony fleet at Kepler 442b was powerful, but they were now facing enemies on every front. You thought you had us surrounded, Cho continued. But the truth is, we've had you surrounded for years. You just didn't know it. Corvin looked at his displays, seeing his empire under attack from within. The hunters had become the hunted, and he was beginning to understand that his species had made a terrible mistake when they chose to threaten humanity. Commander Yoon Dae-yoon walked slowly through the corridors of Admiral Corvin's flagship, his footsteps echoing in the metal hallways. The great hegemony warship was now under human control, its crew either captured or surrendered. After 50 years of pretending to be a helpless slave, Yoon was finally free to walk as an equal. He found Admiral Corvin in the ship's command center, sitting alone and staring at displays that showed the collapse of his empire. The proud alien. The leader who had once threatened to destroy all humanity now looked old and defeated. Admiral Yoon said quietly, taking a seat across from him. It's over. Corvin looked up with his tired amber eyes. How?
I asked simply.
How did you do it? Yoon leaned back in his chair. You made one mistake, Admiral. You thought that strength came from having the biggest ships and the most powerful weapons. But real strength comes from having friends. The displays around them showed the truth of those words. Across the galaxy, the hegemony's empire was crumbling, not because of human firepower, but because of human diplomacy. For decades, while the colonists had been gathering intelligence about hegemony technology, they had also been making contact with other enslaved species. The Zephyrians were the first to join us, Yoon explained.
Nice.
They're excellent engineers, and they helped us improve our ship designs. The Christic people are master miners, and they provided us with rare materials. The Veltar are skilled fighters, and they trained our soldiers. Corvin shook his head in disbelief. But how did you coordinate all of this? How did you communicate across such vast distances without us detecting it? It's the same way we've been communicating with Earth for 50 years, Yoon replied. Quantum transmitters. Hidden in cargo containers, disguised as simple tools, even built into the bodies of volunteers from species that could survive the surgery. We created a communication network that spanned your entire empire. The Admiral's scaled hands trembled as he processed this information. You've been planning this rebellion for decades. Not just planning, Yoon corrected. We've been building it. Every species you enslaved, every world you conquered, every person you oppressed, they all became part of our network. They were all waiting for someone to show them that the hegemony could be defeated. On the planet's surface, the celebration was already beginning. Humans and aliens who had been enslaved, together, were now working together to build something new. The colony that had been a prison for 50 years was becoming the capital of a new. Alliance Dr. Kim Hae-won stood in the communications center, coordinating with rebel forces across the galaxy. Report from the Andorian system, she called out. To her team, the hegemony garrison has surrendered. The local population is declaring independence. Similar reports were coming in from dozens of star systems. The hegemony's empire had been held together by fear, but once that fear was broken, it collapsed like a house of cards. What about Earth's fleet? Asked Nem Sora, who was now serving as the colony's military coordinator. They're providing support. Where needed, Dr. Kim replied. But mostly, they're just watching. This isn't Earth's victory, it's everyone's victory. Back on the flagship, Admiral Corvin was studying a galactic map that showed the scope of the rebellion. Red dots marked systems where the hegemony still held control, but they were vastly outnumbered by the blue dots representing free worlds. Your empire is finished, Yoon said gently. But this doesn't have to be the end for your people. We're not interested in revenge, Admiral. We're interested in building something better. What do you mean, Corvin asked. The coalition of free worlds, Yoon explained. A galaxy where every species has a voice, where no one rules over anyone else through fear. Your people can be part of it if they choose to abandon the old ways. Corvin was quiet for a long moment. And if we refuse, then you'll be alone, Yoon said simply. No one will serve you anymore. No one will fear you. You'll be just another species among many, but without friends or allies. The truth of that statement was already becoming clear. Reports were coming in from the hegemony homeworld, where the government was falling apart as different factions fought over what remained of their power. Without their empire to rule, the hegemony leaders were discovering that they had very little left. How do I know this coalition will be any different? Corvin asked. How do I know you won't become the new oppressors? Yoon smiled. Because that's not how humans think. We don't want to rule the galaxy, Admiral. We just want to make sure that no one else can do to us what you tried to do. 3 months later, Commander Cho Hee-jin stood on the bridge of her flagship. As it entered Earth's solar system, behind her, a fleet of ships carried the freed colonists home. But they weren't just human ships. Vessels from dozens of species had joined the journey, representatives of the new alliance that was already changing the galaxy. Welcome home, she said over the intercom as Earth appeared on the main screen. Learn that sometimes the best defense is knowing when to appear weak while growing strong. The blue marble of Earth grew larger as they approached, and Cho knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was a different place now, one where freedom mattered more than fear, where cooperation was stronger than conquest.